What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here from DataDash, and today is December 1st of 2023. Well, folks, I hope you all are having a fantastic day wherever you are, because in today's video, I want to spend some time to break down one of the biggest headlines we've seen in this month, and that's the fact that MicroStrategy has come out and acquired another $600 million of Bitcoin in the month of November, effectively increasing their holdings by about 10%. Now, I want to spend some time to really break down what this headline means, explain about how MicroStrategy actually goes about acquiring Bitcoin, and also try to clear up some confusion some people might have, but effectively talk about how MicroStrategy has already been serving as a pseudo Bitcoin ETF in the crypto space for some time. And beyond that as well, talk a little bit as well about whether or not these types of inflows, albeit they sound large, whether or not they're going to be enough to really drive forward a long-term bull market. We got a lot to unpack here in today's video, so if you guys happen to enjoy it, consider dropping a like. It's one of the greatest ways you can support the channel, and let's go ahead and kick things off. Now, no matter where you sit here when it comes to where the market's going, at the end of the day, guys, this is a positive news story here. This is a good thing for Bitcoin's price. It is a net entrance of new liquidity into the market with a clear purpose of going out and buying Bitcoin. So this has probably played to some degree some of the role in how November's price was able to slowly but steadily kind of inch up here, even after a pretty sizable rally here back in October. But I want to go ahead and explain a little bit about how MicroStrategy is operating here, how it goes about raising capital and purchasing Bitcoin, and also clear up some confusion around the headlines, because as some of you may recall, beyond this headline here in November, many of you might remember back in August, MicroStrategy had issued a round of Class A common stock to raise upwards of $750 million from three key institutional entities, these entities being Cohen & Company LLC, Canaccord Genuity LLC, and Berenberg Capital Markets LLC. I hope that I pronounced all those right. But the key point here that I want to make is that, essentially speaking, these purchases in November are not separate from that raise, meaning that MicroStrategy didn't buy $750 million of Bitcoin and then do an additional $600 million. This was essentially them taking that $750 million raised in the Class A stock raise that they did, and effectively putting it to use, going out and buying Bitcoin as probably intended and probably agreed upon between the investors who were basically purchasing MicroStrategy stock. Or at least they understand that that's how MicroStrategy operates. Any cash they get, they're going into purchasing more Bitcoin. So I wanted to clear that up here. But outside of that, there is a really important announcement that comes with this. Similar to the August 2023 announcement, MicroStrategy is looking and setting on a prospectus essentially to go out and raise another $750 million to purchase more Bitcoin, so another Class A stock raise. Essentially, they're going to be looking to raise $750 million from similar entities to before. Again, Cohen & Company LLC, Canaccord Genuity LLC, and BTIG LLC. Now, I don't exactly know what these entities are looking to do with said Bitcoin or said exposure to MicroStrategy. To understand Cohen & Company here is actually TD Cohen. This is, again, essentially an effective subsidiary of TD Securities or TD Ameritrade. So one of these large financial entities within the financial space. And outside of that as well, you also have, I think, Canaccord Genuity LLC, or as we saw in the prior one, Berenberg Capital Markets LLC, some entities that are over in European markets. So generally the institutional crowd. And I think looking to effectively utilize MicroStrategy and its current approach to serving as this kind of pseudo Bitcoin ETF as a way to front run on a large scale the upcoming Bitcoin ETF. That's at least what I think these investors are likely doing. It's probably high net worth private investors. And essentially, this is why, again, I emphasize that MicroStrategy for the longest period of time over this past year has effectively proven with these Class A share issuances that they are like a Bitcoin ETF. They may not say it outright. They may, for legal purposes, not be able to claim that, but it is kind of true here. And the really important thing to consider is that just like an ETF, which can basically seed new shares, right, as people have been hoping that BlackRock is starting to buy the Bitcoin that they're going to use to back their spot ETF application, well, MicroStrategy is effectively doing a very similar thing here. They're basically going out and diluting their share base with an express purpose of going out and, well, purchasing more Bitcoin. And this is why I've said for a long time that institutions and large players, if there really is this guarantee of a Bitcoin ETF. There is this massive demand that is, people are just looking to hopefully front run as much as possible because they know that the big bucks are coming. They can do that through MicroStrategy. It's not just you and I who can buy on Coinbase or buy GBTC, which might be limiting as it's an ETN product versus an ETF, right? You can use MicroStrategy. There's no restriction. Like from the highest, most risk-averse kind of institutional players down to you and I, everyday Joes, going out there and buying Bitcoin in our exchange account. Anyone can go out and buy MicroStrategy shares. So it is very important here to understand that MicroStrategy as a company has effectively served as this ETF. And with its current market capitalization, it's sitting around $7-8 billion. And it matches relatively near 1-to-1 with its Bitcoin holdings. So this is, again, an important thing to understand here when we're trying to determine whether or not there's this massive wave of institutional demand and whether or not it's going to be enough to really drive a full-scale bull market. Let's talk about it as we go throughout the video here. Now, again, above all, great news. It's awesome to see that we're seeing more purchases of Bitcoin through MicroStrategy, but I want to go ahead and bring up the topic here of liquidity. Now, I understand a lot of you out there, again, have said that stablecoins are growingly irrelevant in the space, as we'll kind of talk about. A lot of people who are more bullish have started to ignore it. But of course, a lot of those same people have started to say, hey, but Nick, stablecoin liquidity is starting to go up again. It's a new bull market. It's really exciting. Well, again, bear in mind, guys, that this is a 5% expansion, or about $5 billion expansion in stablecoin liquidity, far down from where we were back here, and also pretty much where we were back here in March. But irrespective of what stablecoins do over the next couple of days or weeks, or even the next few months, I need to emphasize something very important for you guys to consider when we're talking about this new entrance of an ETF into the market and the institutional inflows, the floodgates being opened, and whether or not there's really going to be enough to sustain a full-scale bull market. If we look back at the last cycle, we saw that stablecoins were that on-ramp when there was massive money printing and there was a need to get money into the crypto market. We saw a nearly $130 billion expansion in stablecoin liquidity. This was the vehicle or means of choice to get into crypto assets for institutional investors such as hedge funds, family funds, more of the not so much unprofessional but more offshore part of the world of institutional investing. Now with the Bitcoin ETF, we have to ask whether or not we're going to see that same type of aggressive allocation into the crypto space. 128 billion is no laughing matter, and it's a reason why Bitcoin went from the lows of 3,900 all the way up to 65 to even 69,000 at two of the relative tops for all-time highs in Bitcoin. Now we have to ask whether or not, as we're at a much higher price range, and expecting much higher price targets. Many people are calling for a 6-digit Bitcoin, so $100,000 or more. Sometimes some are calling for 150, 200K. We talked about a potential scenario where that could play in our last video, albeit it's not our majority opinion. Unfortunately, some people don't watch the whole video or even 30 seconds into it. But the key point here is that, generally speaking, that was a huge entrance of new liquidity into the market. And we see just how much is required in order to actually get Bitcoin to where it needs to go. If we think about it from market capitalization terms, Bitcoin was roughly around a $75 billion market cap at those lows. And to get up essentially towards this $1 trillion market cap here, we needed that huge increase in net liquidity, over $130 billion. So how much are we going to need from these relative lows in order for Bitcoin to essentially get to the prior all-time highs at around 1.2 trillion in market cap, or potentially go even higher when it sets at a potential price tag of 100K, 150, or 200,000, like a lot of people are calling for? I don't know the exact number, to be completely frank with you guys. Practically no one knows what that number has to be. People can have models and predictions around it, but at the end of the day, it's going to require a massive sum of liquidity, much more than the last cycle. We were working from a much higher base, more than 3 times higher than where we were back in March of 2020, if we're utilizing the November 2020 lows from the FTX crash as the potential new bear market lows. Then we are going to need a lot more liquidity to maintain a sustained rally higher. I'll go ahead and point out why this is. We can see very clearly here that as time progresses, the demand for dollar liquidity gets bigger and bigger. This is Bitcoin's market cap divided by the overall market cap, or amount of dollar liquidity between USDT and USDC. We've looked at similar versions of this chart in the past, but what I want to indicate here is that, as you can see, when dollar liquidity is abundant versus Bitcoin's market cap, we can see in, say, January 2019, when Bitcoin found its bear market rally. All right, this is the first major pickup here going into the summer of 2019, or here in March of 2020, or here in June of 2021 in the 50% correction in the last bull market, or here in June of 2022. Right, these were the moments here where it was the best time to buy Bitcoin, when liquidity was abundant and Bitcoin's price was not trading at a premium but a significant discount. On the other end of the stick, we can see in June of 2019, we can see in February of 2020, we can see here between January 2021 and April 2021, and also here as well in November 2021 when we set our final bull market high. All of these were the points where liquidity was exhausted, Bitcoin's price was exhausted, and it was ready for a significant correction. Well, we can see here now that we are essentially at our highest premium in that term since back in January 2022. And in accordance to this chart, the highest point we've been against this line of resistance. Now, I'm not saying that this can't hang up in this range for a little bit, as we are approaching a more optimistic and euphoric period of time, and especially as people are anticipating that the ETF is going to step in and essentially replace the need for the liquidity on-ramp that USDT and other stablecoins like USDC and BUSD and Paxos have all served for the crypto space over the last few years as that institutional on-ramp for big money. Well, again, if that is the case, we better be relying on these ETFs because it's not coming in stablecoin liquidity, right? A $5 billion increase here, pretty much on par with where we were in October 2022 or March 2023. That's not what's driving it here. So we've got to hope that the BlackRock iShares Bitcoin ETF, we got to hope that MicroStrategy, we got to hope that these new on-ramps are going to fulfill that demand. And when we take a look back at history and saw just how much was needed, nearly 130 billion, we better start asking the big question of what we can realistically expect from a Bitcoin ETF. Well, as many of you might recall, we did a video a while back covering some research from Charles Yu over at Galaxy Digital Research. They did, I think, one of the best pieces out there on analyzing the potential inflows of a Bitcoin ETF. It is a very pragmatic analysis here. It utilizes a lot of key ways that I would probably have used myself as well towards analyzing these things. So I want to again give Charles that shout out here. I think he did a wonderful job on it. He covered the existing flows or existing ownership of current BTC held across various funds like the GBTC product and other foreign ETFs across the world, as Bitcoin ETFs have been allowed in many markets for a long period of time. I understand in the US, it is a probably much bigger deal when you consider how much money is invested in passive income or passive investing in various different types of assets, whether that be equities, various ETFs for different commodities like gold, and even various different types of fixed income assets. It is going to be a bigger deal than any other market, hands down. The question is, how big of a deal? How much can we realistically expect? And if you take something like, I think, for example, like Charles put out here, which I think is still on the optimistic side, he points out essentially a metric of around $14.4 billion in the first year, and that number continuing to expand as time progresses. Now, I think that this $14.4 billion figure is really on par with the expectations I would expect. And we even did a video a while back saying that, like, what if Charles in this case, or Galaxy Digital, again, a company and an entity that's very involved in the crypto space who wants to see Bitcoin and crypto growing, what if they actually got it wrong and it's even bigger than that? What if it's 20, 30 billion, right? And this is where, again, the only difference I had here with the research piece is essentially what kind of price impact it's going to have. Because as we can see here, guys, just how much dollar liquidity was required for that rally in Bitcoin's price from around a little under $4,000 to go up towards $65,000 to $69,000 in the last cycle. If we are talking about just $14 billion and Bitcoin is working from a much higher base at its bear market lows and is going up towards, our expectations that it's going to uncharted territory, we're going to need a lot more than $14 billion of inflows. We're going to need so much more liquidity, so much more capital, especially if stablecoins are not showing up to the plate. right? And you need not look further than Bitcoin's market cap terms to understand that $14 billion of buy-side pressure, albeit it would be great for Bitcoin, it's a net positive. Is it going to be enough to offset increased sell-side pressure as Bitcoin's price moves up? This is a really important point we need to consider, guys. And it's also why I don't scoff so much when MicroStrategy, oh, they bought $600 million of Bitcoin. That's awesome. It's cool. And I think it's great to see that there are some people who are kind of front running it. It does give me a bit more confidence that there may be a Bitcoin ETF. But it's certainly not the kind of size and liquidity that we would expect. If this ETF is such a massive deal, why aren't we seeing billions flowing into MicroStrategy? Or let alone if people's expectations that maybe Galaxy and myself are being too conservative and that there's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to come into the space. Where's the evidence for it? If we take a look at GBTC, right, there is still a 10% discount here on the ETN product. When I take a look at BlackRock versus the financial sector, it has continued to face resistance here, right? And I think it's important to track it because back in July, this is when we got the announcement. So it's not trading at some massive premium, right? If BlackRock is just going to own this market, I keep coming back to this point, if it's going to be a huge revenue driver for its business, why aren't we seeing the market and Wall Street price it in? Why is it that the premium for MicroStrategy shares against Bitcoin is still either setting in lower highs here or relatively similar highs to the past at a continued lower rate from where it was back in July? This to me doesn't look like optimism going into a Bitcoin ETF from the institutional side. What I'm sensing is there's a lot of retail investors hoping that these inflows from MicroStrategy, the inflows from an ETF are just going to accelerate Bitcoin higher so we can hopefully sell to the institutions, or either way, if you plan to still hold it, the institutions are just going to buy our bags and it's just going to go up into the moon. I don't think it's going to be that simple, guys. And that's not to say Bitcoin can't keep churning up a little bit here over the next couple of weeks, next month or so. But if you're going into this with a HODL mindset and you are expecting that a year or two out from now, Bitcoin is going to be at a higher price from now, my only point I'd say to you is to be cautious on your confidence and those expectations. I can tell you guys, the only reason I say that is not because I'm attacking Bitcoin or your hopes that Bitcoin is going to move higher. It's definitely moved up here in 2023. I have the humility of admitting that we got that wrong. But I will say the one thing that we are not proven wrong on yet is whether or not this is going to actually be a bull market, or if this is going to be a very high extended relief rally that does not break new all-time highs and gets a lot of investors trapped. Just heed caution. I would heed caution, guys. We've seen this in the past with the futures contract launch. We've seen it with Coinbase going public in the last cycle. These are usually the events that top markets, not drive new bull runs. So just keep that in mind when you're going out there and, allocating yourself to Bitcoin. I have no problem, as we talked about in the last video. Unfortunately, people saw the last video and they thought, oh, Nicholas is now all in. He's flipping bullish, right? At the end of the day, guys, no, I talked in the last video about a fractional chance. I think that it's, again, a 10-20% chance that we have this catalyst moment where Bitcoin could really go off and into the sun as a multi-trillion-dollar asset. I'm not opposed to that potentially happening, but it is not my majority opinion, and it's not where I'm allocated. I'm not allocated with 100% of my funds. And if you are 100% allocated to Bitcoin, I would, again, heed caution. I only say that as a friend. Everyone knows their own risk profile. Everyone knows their own investment thesis, their own time frame, and so be it. It is your decision to make that. But I'm just going to tell you guys how I see it. I'm going to tell you how I'm positioned, roughly speaking, and go always try to give you guys the best and honest opinion I can on the market. Going into the macro environment we're in right now, I don't sense some capacity for Bitcoin to just absolutely go bonkers. At least it's not the likely scenario that I see. So again, keep in mind that topic of inflows, guys. Keep on top of what's going on with MicroStrategy. If there is $1.5 billion in kind of premature inflows before a supposed ETF, I think that should give us an honest gauge about how much we can really expect from the broader institutional wave that may be coming, or really may not be coming, as so many people are expecting. That's all we're here to warn you guys about, and to at least provide us some food for thought as you're going through your own analysis. That's it for today's video, guys. I hope you guys have a great start to your week. Stay safe, trade smart, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.